10. Robbery prevention fail. In Illinois, several people were taken into custody by the Major Crimes Task Force following a fatal armed robbery. These people got in trouble not only for the armed robbery, but also for shooting Christopher Lloyd, the 45-year-old man who tried to stop the robbery from happening. Here's how all this craziness went down. Christopher was in the Boost Mobile store at the Pace Center Plaza with his girlfriend. It was a Tuesday afternoon and they were looking at new phones. That was when two armed robbers walked in and forced everyone inside to go to the back of the store. The robbers then demanded that the clerk open the safe. He obliged, and as the clerk struggled to open the lock, Christopher went after the gun of the robber nearest to him. He must have been watching too many action movies, because he thought he could pull the gun out of the criminal's hands. It didn't go the way he hoped, though. During the struggle, he wound up taking a bullet. When the robbers had finished with their robbing, they took off as quickly as they could. Paramedics came to take Christopher to the hospital, but the brave hero died shortly after arrival. One of the robbers was caught right away, and the second one was tracked down by the Major Crimes Task Force the day after. Christopher's death shocked the community, and most of all his girlfriend, who watched the whole thing unfold. What makes it so tragic is that he died trying to be brave and sticking up for a cell phone store, when in reality, the robbers may have just let them all go once they got their money. 9. The Dog Savior. A man has died following a brave rescue attempt to save 3 dogs from a frozen California lake. The victim in this situation is David Schmidt, who plunged into the icy waters on Thanksgiving to save his beloved animals. It all started when David was taking his 3 dogs out for a walk. He was walking them near Myers, close to South Lake Tahoe. According to the El Dorado County Sheriff's Office, 2 of the dogs belonged to David, and the third was the pet of one of his friends. As he moved along the shores of Lake Barron, one of the dogs ran onto the thin ice of the lake and fell through. The other dogs, not quite knowing what was happening, also ran after the first and plunged into the lake. David, not about to let his dogs drown right in front of him, jumped in to save the day. Sadly for David, by the time the officers arrived, responding to a report of a possible drowning, he was dead. He drowned trying to save his dogs. And all for nothing. The cops found 2 of the dogs still in the water, still alive and paddling. All 3 dogs ended up being recovered safely and taken to the local vet. Dogs are pretty resilient, even in frozen water. If David had just waited and called for help, he would still be alive, and so would his dogs. 8. Civil retribution. Sometimes being a Good Samaritan doesn't turn out the way it should. For Good Samaritan Kirsty Jahan, trying to be a good person got her labeled a murderer. Technically, she did kill somebody. She shot and killed Justin Holland, 25 years old, back in February of 2017. But she did it to save the life of a conservation officer who had been responding to a call about a suspicious vehicle. Kirsty Jahan had simply been in the right place at the right time to witness Justin Holland overpower the officer. The officer had been trying to put handcuffs on Holland when things got physical. Watching from the sidelines, it looked as though Holland was about to get a hold of the officer's weapon. That was when she pulled out her own gun, shot him once in the shoulder, and brought the situation under control. When questioned by the police, Kirsty said she was in fear of the officer's life and that she did what she believed was necessary to save him. Regardless of what you think about guns, it does take some serious bravery to step into a situation like this and pull the trigger. Plus, she shot him in the shoulder. She was not trying to blow his brains out or something. But despite what happened, Holland's family is now suing both Kirsty and the Indiana Department of Natural Resources for unjustified deadly force. So far, being a Good Samaritan has cost Kirsty roughly $25,000 in legal fees. 7. Sued at Starbucks. A Good Samaritan is facing a lawsuit after injuring a robber. In July, Ryan Flores walked into a Starbucks with a gun drawn and tried to rob the place. 58-year-old Craig Jerry stepped up to stop the robbery as it was happening. He pried the weapon out of the assailant's hands, and the two men got into a brutal fight. Both of them were hurt, but the robber ended up being stabbed by the Good Samaritan. While Ryan Flores is facing jail time for what he did, his family is busy suing the guy who stopped him from committing the robbery. Here's what happened with the fighting. Ryan was wearing a Transformers mask. He pulled a gun and a knife and demanded the barista at the counter give him money. Then Craig Jerry came up from behind and slapped him with a chair. A struggle ensued. Jerry got stabbed in the neck, but he managed to get the knife away from Ryan. Once he had the knife in his own hands, adrenaline took over and he stabbed the robber several times. In total, 17 times. Chief of Police Jerry Dyer has called Craig a hero, but the family of Ryan say he's a menace. They claim that he used excessive force when trying to stop the robbery. Craig is now facing huge lawyer bills to fight off the lawsuit, even though he's not facing any criminal charges. Who do you think is in the wrong here? Do you think a Good Samaritan should be sued for trying to prevent a robbery and defending himself after getting stabbed in the neck? Or do you think Greg should have just let the robber get away with it? Let us know your thoughts and opinions in the comments, and don't forget to hit subscribe. 6. Swimming issues. In the Ruedi Reservoir near Basalt in Pitkin County, 2 men drowned to death. It happened after one of the men jumped into the water to save the other, as he was having a bit of trouble swimming back to safety. 2 boats had been tied together in the middle of the reservoir. One of the men jumped off his boat and started swimming away. After a minute, it became obvious he wasn't a very good swimmer. He was flailing, having difficulty and bobbing up and down. The second man from the other boat saw what was happening and rushed in to save the day. He jumped into the water, swam over to the guy who was having problems, and tried to bring him back. But by the time he reached him, he had already fallen underneath the surface. The second man went underneath the surface to try to get him, but sadly, neither of them ever appeared again. The bodies never even floated to the surface. When the Basalt Fire Department showed up to the scene, they had to use a fish finder to see where the 2 bodies had ended up. They discovered them about 30 feet, 9 meters below the surface. From that point, it turned from a rescue to a recovery. The moral of the story here is that if you see someone drowning, make sure you know how to swim before you try to save them. 5. Animal rescue. In the small village of Molpur in India, a very brave and courageous man tried to save the life of a pigeon. I mean, really, who's to say a pigeon is less important than a dog? In this case, the brave, albeit stubborn individual was desperate to free a pigeon that had gotten tangled in some power lines and was under threat of electrocution. It happened at the local market, with spectators watching as the pigeon struggled helplessly in pain. Our hero launched into action. He wasn't completely stupid, meaning he wasn't going to climb up and touch the lines himself. He found an iron rod and tied a short wooden stick to it. Then he climbed the light pole and tried to disengage the pigeon using his makeshift tool. It didn't work. The second his stick touched the live wire, thousands of volts of intense electricity flowed into his body. He was horribly electrocuted, which caused him to fall off the electric pole and hit his head on the ground. He fell like a sack of potatoes, dead even before he hit the ground. Perhaps the worst part of this whole situation is that the man left behind his wife and children, and all to save a pigeon. 4. Too good of a prank. One ridiculously brave man looked incredibly stupid after rushing to save somebody he thought was about to fall off a roof. As it turned out, the 65-year-old veteran, for all his bravery, couldn't tell the difference between a real person and a stuffed dummy that had been placed on the roof as a funny Christmas decoration. Alfred Norwood Jr. was driving with his wife through Austin, Texas. It was just before sunrise, and they were on their way to work. That was when Alfred saw a man tangled in Christmas lights hanging on for dear life to the gutters of a house. It looked like the man was in distress, so Alfred pulled the car over to do something about it. He went and grabbed a ladder, dragged it over to where the man was hanging, and tried to save his life. It wasn't until he started climbing the ladder that he realized something was very wrong. His act of heroism was all for nothing. It wasn't a real person. He was trying to save a dummy. All of this may have been forgotten if not for the home surveillance system of the homeowners. They caught the whole thing on camera. It struck them as so hilarious that they have since put up a warning sign outside their house, telling people not to call the police or to try and save their Christmas decorations. 3. Charge for being a Good Samaritan. Yet another Good Samaritan has gotten into some trouble for trying to stop a crime. This time it happened in Wisconsin, when a man tried to prevent a robbery by attacking the suspect with a taser. According to USA Today, Jeff Steele was hanging out at his local bar at around 2 o'clock in the morning on a Monday when a woman came in with a mask, pointed a gun at the bartender, and demanded all the cash in the register. As the robber was busy with the bartender, Jeff came up behind her and tried to shock her with the taser. However, he didn't actually use it. The woman saw what he was trying to do, got scared, and took off before she even got any of the money. She was arrested just minutes later, and so was Jeff. According to the cops, he was charged with the possession of an electronic weapon. This is because he didn't have a permit to carry the taser. You're allowed to have these kinds of things in your home and on your private property, but you're not allowed to carry them in public. Who knew? Even though Jeff clearly lives in a rough neighborhood and needs it for self-defense, he still got charged with a crime. 2. A failed rescue. Colombian model Maria Fernanda Aguilar drowned while swimming at the beach. Her boyfriend almost drowned with her, but was able to survive the terrifying ordeal. According to eyewitnesses, the pair had swum way too far out into the sea off the coast of Colombia. People on the beach could hear them both screaming for help as they realized they were stuck too far from the shore. One of their friends attempted to save them, but couldn't make it out that far. So he quickly swam back to the beach and beseeched the lifeguard for help. But while this guy was brave, the lifeguard was totally useless. He said it was too dangerous to go out and try to save them. Apparently, the lifeguard had no fuel for his jet ski and didn't have enough life vests. The lifeguard literally refused to get into the water to save Maria and Julian. They had to wait nearly 2 hours for proper search and rescue teams to arrive. And by the time the search and rescue workers pulled the 20-year-old girl and her boyfriend out of the water, it was too late. Maria died at the hospital, while Julian made a full recovery. How many of you think this lifeguard should be fired? 1. Disaster on London Bridge. Folajimi Olabunmi Adewole was the definition of a hero. He died trying to save the life of a woman who tumbled off the London Bridge and plunged into the River Thames. Folajimi has been described by friends as one of the kindest people in the world. He became a true hero around midnight on April 24th when he and another man heard the scream and saw the woman flip off the bridge and fall into the river below. He immediately handed his cell phone to his friend, told him to make sure that the police were coming, and then he took off his pants and jumped into the water. At the same time, there was another Good Samaritan also swimming towards the woman to save her. Here's where everything fell apart. It was the middle of the night, pitch black, and nobody could really see exactly what was happening. When Folajimi hit the water, he must have become disoriented. He never even reached the woman to help her, and ended up being carried off down the river by himself. The Coast Guard saved the woman and the other brave man who had gone in after her, but they could not find Folajimi's body. It wasn't until around 6 o'clock in the morning the next day that they finally pulled his soaked corpse out of the river. Has being brave ever gone horribly wrong for you? Let us know your story in the comments, and thanks so much for watching the video. Remember to hit subscribe to help support the channel and check back for more great content. See you next time. Bye.